Now on our opera tour, we are moving to Germany. Chapter 21 is Romantic Opera, Germany. The inspiration for Germanic opera of the latter part of the Romantic era was actually Nordic fantasy literature. Richard Wagner, who was the main composer of this time in Germany for opera, and you're going to soon learn was quite an innovator, looked back to the Middle Ages for inspiration. Medieval sagas and epic poems, tales of dark castles, fair maidens, heroic princes, and fire-breathing dragons. There was a rediscovery and publication of lost epics. The German Song of the Nibelungens was published in 1820. The Anglo-Saxon Beowulf poem, 1815. And the fantasy literature of today also is influenced by these works. For example, The Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter series. And the idea of an invisibility cloak, it comes back from this old literature. Richard Wagner was born in 1813, died in 1883. He was a poet, philosopher, politician, propagandist, a visionary who believed his operas would revolutionize society. He was controversial, and he inspired extreme reactions in people, but he exerted an enormous influence on the musical landscape of this time. He was a determined, ruthless visionary, largely self-taught, and his first big success was with the opera Rienzi in 1842. He really resented having to write Rienzi the way he did because he did not like Italian opera, and he did not like the bel canto opera scene. He had a different idea and a different direction he wanted to take opera in. Some of his more famous operas were The Flying Dutchman, 1844, Tannhäuser, 1845, and Lohengrin, 1848. Even though some of his ideas had come about by 1848, his real revolution was to start later. He was forced to leave Germany in 1848 for political reasons. He was, if you remember, 1848 was a big year for uprisings, and he was on the wrong side of one of those. Plus, he skipped town conveniently because he owed creditors for some of these operas. He spent his exile in Switzerland, kind of a self-motivated exile. His personal life was very interesting. His first marriage ended in divorce, and while he was still married, he had an affair with the wife of one of his patrons. He had another affair with the wife of the conductor of the Tristan Orchestra, Cosima von Bülow. She was the daughter of Franz Liszt and Marie d'Agoult from their affair. She and Wagner married 7 years later. He was 24 years older than Cosima. Cosima was involved very much in his career and directed the Bayreuth Festival for more than 20 years after Wagner's death. Bayreuth Festival was an annual event that still takes place now, and always the works performed are Wagner's operas. After his exile, he had gained the support of King Ludwig II of Bavaria. King Ludwig II actually designed and had built the castle that is the inspiration for the Disney castle, that's both in Disney World and Disneyland. King Ludwig encouraged Wagner to finish his Ring cycle, which was his most important work. He helped pay off his debts, he gave Wagner an annual salary, and he sponsored the first productions of the Ring cycle at Bayreuth. And you'll see behind this field in the photograph a picture of the exterior of this concert hall, which was built just for Wagner's operas. He called his operas music dramas. He did not want them to be confused with the earlier versions of opera from Italy and even his earlier works. And so the music drama, in his thinking, was a total work of art. And there's a German word for that, Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art. His idea was that instead of flashy melodies in arias, there would be something he called endless melody, a seamless flow of music. He avoids melodic repetition in most of his arias, even though he doesn't really call them arias. He avoids symmetry and regular cadences, so things kind of seem to go on and on. And he eliminates tuneful arias and vocal ensembles. His operas very much heighten the importance of the orchestra and were no doubt influenced partly because of the Germanic orchestra tradition that began with Beethoven. He introduces something called leitmotif. A leitmotif is a brief, distinctive unit of music. It represents a character, an object, an idea, or an emotion like love. It suggests the character's subconscious thought, and the interaction of different leitmotifs convey meaning. So you could have somebody on the stage singing about their true love for somebody, but there's a leitmotif being played that symbolizes betrayal. So we can actually see inside the mind of the person singing. Wagner's famous ring cycle, Der Ring des Nibelungen, that is the Ring of the Nibelungens, is his magnum opus. It's a timeless fantasy and a timely allegory for 19th century German society. It's a cycle of 4 operas, Das Rheingold, Die Walküre, Siegfried, and the Götterdämmerung. He had a special theater built in Bayreuth, Germany for his operas. You saw a picture of it earlier, and we'll see the picture of the orchestra pit shortly. The first Bayreuth festival was staged in 1876 with the entire ring cycle. The 4 operas add up to between 17 and 20 hours worth of music, depending on how you count intermissions and so forth. So they cannot be done on one day. They have to be done over 4 days. The themes of this opera cycle explore power, greed, heroism, and race. The characters of the ring cycle are, there's so many characters, but the Valkyries are 9 high-flying, horseback-riding women warriors fathered by Wotan, the chief god. The situation is, with music that pushes continually forward for more than 5 minutes, the warrior maidens carrying the corpses of fallen heroes to Valhalla, the house of the gods, arrive at a mountaintop. So we're going to hear the entrance of the Valkyries. This is actually a leitmotif. And then next we have the vocal motive. And that's played by the violins. So this is probably even a leitmotif that that you've probably heard this before, actually, because sometimes when operas are referenced or actually made light of, this theme is used. I think that it's in a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the first performance of the ring cycle was in 1870, and more characters. Wotan, we mentioned him earlier, is the chief of all of the gods, and Brunhilde was the leader of the Valkyries. the situation here in this photo is Wotan is bidding eternal farewell to his beloved daughter Brunhilde at the outset of the final scene of the drama. So we're kind of starting at the end. The characters, again, are, I guess what I have to say here is she's begging him for forgiveness. And there's so much that happens in this ring cycle. I can't even unpack the story right now, but we're sort of talking about the end here. So here's a few more leitmotifs that that the opera cycle has. There's the Siegfried as hero leitmotif. There's a leitmotif of magic fire, and the sound is, here's the slumber one. And the magic fire one is particularly wonderful. So listen to the violins. All right, so to sing in a Wagnerian opera, an opera singer has to be at the peak of their powers in their voices, and they certainly cannot have a small voice. It has to be, not even every successful opera singer can think about performing Wagnerian opera. It really takes somebody with powerful voice and stamina. I don't think I'm going to get the Siegfried leitmotif to show up, and I'm afraid to click on this because I've had trouble with copyrights and loading things up on YouTube, so I'm not going to click that link right now. Make sure that you look at the link that I'm going to put up on Blackboard for this week so that you can watch a short video about leitmotif, and it will really illuminate to you the importance of leitmotif in Wagnerian operas, and also how leitmotif is used today. Here's the orchestra's role a little bit. It carried the music drama along, no more recitatives, arias, etc. It's just one long web woven with singing and the orchestra. There's a new intensity of emotional expression that's possible with this, and the opera orchestra is larger than ever with new instruments. He even had to have some instruments invented. There's a special bass drum called the Wagnerian drum, and so the brass section is now equal to others in importance, and there are exciting new tone colors that he creates with his orchestra. This is a massive orchestra pit, and only a mind with grandiose plans like Wagner's could have come up with the design of this opera house. It's the only one like it in the entire world, and it's massive and actually extends underneath the stage. This is the edge of the stage, and it's sort of cantilevered over the edge here. And the sound, I've talked to somebody who's been to Bayreuth to hear opera, and it's absolutely amazing, I guess, to hear the orchestra sound come out of this orchestra pit. So, so Wagner was a very complex person. He was very charismatic, and he was, and perhaps you've had somebody in your life like this. It's like a con man, but you forgive him for it. And I've had a few people in my life like this, and it's a little bit crazy making, but often they're actually quite brilliant people. So so Wagner, controversial figure. I know that one of the troubling things about Wagner was that Hitler admired Wagner's music and his ideas about Jews, and ironically, Wagner had a lot of Jewish roots in his childhood and grew up in a Jewish part of his town. So the anti-Semitism is, kind of unforgivable for me in general, but puzzling, I guess, also because of that. So I hope you enjoy your exploration of Wagner and all of the listening guides. I've really cut back on the amount of music I try to play in these presentations, mainly because of copyright issues when I upload the videos to the internet. Thank you very much, and let me know if you have any questions.